Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, friends and all of our neighbors, welcome to today's ceremony and thank you for attending. This is the largest crowd we have ever been honored with for this Memorial Day commemoration. Welcome and thank you all for attending. I'm honored to be speaking with you today on such a very important occasion. Please rise and join in the singing of our national anthem, followed by some brief remarks. Thank you. That, of course, is the wonderful Orange High School Band. Thank you, all of them, for coming here. School is out, and they still muster out for this event. Thank you. Our order of proceedings shall be to hear from our distinguished guests, former Army Chaplain and Captain Father Joseph Brancatelli, and Pepper Pike resident, retired United States Marine Corps Captain Robert Rice. Colonel, pardon me, Colonel. I didn't mean to demote you, sir. That was too hard won to become a colonel. Colonel Robert Rice. It will be followed by songs of our service branches of the Army, Navy, Marines, Air Force, and Coast Guard. At the conclusion of the ceremonies, I'll ask that you please rise and stay in place for the raising of the flag, withdrawal of the color guard, and the playing of taps. I also introduce and we welcome here with us, in addition to former Captain Brancatelli and retired Colonel Rice, our Police Chief Carl Dietz, Fire Chief John Frazier, our Pepper Pike Honor Guard led by Executive Lieutenant James Colbert, who is joined by Navy veteran, now Pepper Pike firefighter Sean Bamber, and Patrolman Joseph Popoff. We also welcome members of our City Council, past and present, Brendan Duvall, Director of Bands for Orange High School, Jake Robinson, Assistant Band Director, Robin Bonner, the Lionette Coach, the incredible members of the Orange High School Marching Band and the Lionettes, all who have taken time to especially prepare for today and to be with us. Orange High School juniors Oliver Hardman, a Pepper Pike resident, and Thomas Probason, Orange Village resident, will honor us with a special presentation of taps played as echo taps at the conclusion of our ceremony. And a very special thanks to members of our service department who take time away from their families and who join us today to set up and break down this event. We acknowledge the veterans and families who are with us today, especially those who have lost loved ones while serving in our nation's military and who come here today to honor them and to remember. We're here today to honor our service members who have lost their lives throughout our history and to remember the sacrifices they have made in the cause of duty, honor, and country. In his farewell address to the cadets of West Point in 1962, General Douglas MacArthur explained those words. Duty, honor, country. Those hallowed words reverently dictate what you ought to be, what you can be, what you will be. They are your rallying point to build courage when courage seems to fail, to regain faith where there seems to be a little cause for faith, and to create hope where hope becomes forlorn. MacArthur's speech was about core values, the unassailable principles for which we are responsible and by which we keep the arc of our lives on a straight and noble course. We live in times when those words must have meaning, not only to those in uniform, but to us all. It is up to us, we the people, to stand for the rule of law, to preserve the flame of democracy, to keep the promise of America alive. Those who have died over the last 250 years for the freedom we enjoy deserve that we do not neglect their ultimate sacrifice, because we may be taken aback by the times we live in, no matter how challenging that may be for many. In the end, any who are available to participate and listen this morning are fortunate by being able to honor those who have gone before. The root word of memorial is memor, which comes from the Latin word memoris and means mindful. This root is also found in other words, like memory and remember. Today we are called upon to remember. For me, that memory is not only of my father serving 80 years ago in April 1945 on Okinawa, or my uncle in Normandy, but the name of my mother's beloved first cousin, Eugene Mannyberg, whose name I sound out so that he may be remembered. I never knew him, but can't forget him. He was killed on the last day of World War II, years before I was born. He was actually shot down the day after the war in the Pacific ended, but he remained a presence in the lives of our family. A picture of him sat on a table in his mother's apartment, my Aunt Zelda. For him, my aunt, for my mother, every day was Memorial Day. Like so many other parents touched with the grief, the shock, the tears and toll of burying a child, I'm sure she never got over his loss and never lived another day without thinking about her brave boy. After 80 years, the remains of Eugene were found and identified just several months ago. This summer, he will be interred next to his mother and father in Detroit. Memorial Day is not intended to mark a 3-day weekend announcing the beginning of summer. Lately, much of the day's meaning seems to have been somewhat lost in that. The historian Drew Gilpin Faust has written about the words of Frederick Douglass at the 4th commemoration of what was then called Decoration Day in 1871. Douglass invoked the eloquence of the dead. We should listen to them. Together they did save the Union, the nation that has given me, you, and so many others opportunities that the war-born imperative of ever-expanding freedom has offered. These men made our lives possible. They were impelled to risk all by a sense of obligation to the future. We possess a reciprocal obligation to the past. We must not squander what they bequeathed to us. Yet Douglass worried that the lives and purposes of the approximately 400,000 Northern soldiers who died in the war, and even the meaning of the war itself, might be forgotten. If the war did not keep the memory of the conflict alive, he implored, I ask in the name of all things sacred, what shall men remember? The Union dead must not be honored only for their bravery or their sacrifice, he insisted. It mattered what they died for. It mattered what the nation chose to remember. They died for their country. They died for their country, Douglass repeated. They had fought against the hell-black system of human bondage and for a nation that embodied, quote, the hope of freedom and self-government throughout the world. Americans must not forget this was why the dead had laid down their lives in numbers no one had anticipated or even could have imagined. This debt and their duty should be in the forefront of our minds this Memorial Day. We must honor these men, women, their bravery, their sacrifice, and especially their purpose. We are being asked not to charge into a hail of mini balls and artillery fire, but only to speak up and to stand up in the face of foundational threats to the principles for which they gave the last full measure of devotion. We have been entrusted with their legacy. Can we trust ourselves to uphold it? Today is for the purpose of preserving memory. We contribute to Memorial Day by remembering and considering how do we make it a better country to make the sacrifice of our fallen count. The brave men and women who died in uniform did so that we could be free and live in our blessed democracy. In return, it is our solemn duty to remember and honor their sacrifice. And so we pause to remember the fallen and to not forget why they died, so that we could be free. They died not only to fight fascism and hate, but to preserve our democracy and rights and the institutions that make this country the nation where all are welcome and may flourish. Let us now pause for a moment and throughout the day reflect upon and remember their sacrifice and why they gave up their lives on the altar of freedom. Please join me in a moment of silence in their memory. The service members we honor today came from all walks of life, but they shared several foundational qualities. They possessed courage, pride, determination, selflessness, dedication to duty, and integrity, all the qualities needed to serve a cause larger than oneself. Many of them didn't ask to leave their homes to fight on distant battlefields. Many didn't even volunteer. They didn't go to war because they loved fighting. They were called to be part of something bigger than themselves. They were ordinary people who responded in extraordinary ways in extreme times. They rose to the nation's call because they wanted to protect a nation which had given them, us, so much. We must always remember that we are joined together in an ongoing experiment in democracy. Those we commemorate today died so that this experiment in democracy could endure. The outcome has never been certain, and that uncertainty surrounds us these days. Success requires people of good faith to work together to succeed. Our nation must never be about divisive and hateful rhetoric. It is not about political party or stoking the fears of class, rivalry, or resentment. Our democracy, our nation, is today challenged from within and from without. The fight of those we honor today continues. From the soldiers who shivered and starved through the winter at Valley Forge to the doughboys crouched in the muddy trenches of France, to the platoon who patrolled the jungles of Vietnam, and the young man or woman who patrolled the mountains, villages, and cities of Afghanistan and Iraq. We remember and honor them all. We also honor the sacrifice and courage of the Ukrainian people, who today fight not only for their own freedom, but in the end for ours as well. Those we commemorate today died so that we could see this country succeed in its mission as a beacon for ourselves, our children, and the rest of the world. Please remember, what you say matters. What you do matters. Never be afraid to be bold in defending our nation and its values from those who seek to do it harm, from without or as critically from within. We can and must be engaged and shape the future. We remember the words spoken by our greatest president, Abraham Lincoln, when he said, "It is for us the living, rather, to be dedicated here to the unfinished work which they who fought here have thus far so nobly advanced. It is for us to be here dedicated to the great task remaining before us, that those honored dead from those honored dead we take increased devotion to that cause for which they gave the last full measure of devotion, that we here highly resolve that these dead shall not have died in vain, that this nation under God shall have a new birth of freedom, and that government of the people, by the people, and for the people shall not perish from the earth." Your presence here today and that of the people gathering all across America is a tribute to those lost troops and to their families. It is a way to say, we remember. We remember and honor them all. Be inspired by who came before. Their sacrifice must not be allowed to have been in vain. We owe them no less. Thank you for attending today. This is an important time for our nation. We are being tested and must always remember that we are joined together in an ongoing experiment in democracy. Let us always remember. We will now hear from the Orange High School Band, America. It is now my honor to introduce the first of our two special speakers for today. Colonel Robert Rice, United States Marine Corps retired, was raised in Lyndhurst, right around the corner, graduating from Brush High School in 1978. He was commissioned a second lieutenant in the United States Marine Corps in 1982. A Marine aviator, Colonel Rice flew the OV-10 Bronco EA-6B Prowler and was the commanding officer of Marine Unmanned Vehicle Squadron 2, flying RQ-2 Pioneers, deploying the squadron to Kuwait and into Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom 1. His other combat tours were in Saudi Arabia, flying missions in support of Operation Desert Storm, and two additional deployments to Italy, flying missions over the former Republic of Yugoslavia during Operation Deny Flight on the first deployment and Operation Decisive Endeavor on the second. Colonel Rice's final assignment prior to retiring in 2011 was as the commanding officer, Marine Corps Base Hawaii. He is a graduate of the Royal College of Defense Studies in London, England, where he concurrently attended King's College London, receiving his Master of Arts in International Studies. Colonel Rice retired and became the city manager of Syracuse, Utah, a community of about 25,000 people. He was then recruited back to the Marine Corps as a senior civilian, serving as Director of Operations for the Marine Corps Installations Command at the Pentagon from 2013 to 2020. He transferred to the Marine Corps Air Stationary, Cherry Point, North Carolina, as their Director of Operations until 2024, when he fully retired and moved back to Northeast Ohio and to here in Pepper Pike with his wife Carol and one awesome Australian Shepherd. Robert is the father of three wonderful children. Colonel, the podium is yours.
Hey, good morning, and thank you for having me at this solemn commemoration. I've spoken at a lot of military events, lots of parades, and the folks that really make every single event special are the band. So let's give another shout out and congratulations and thanks to the Orange High School Band for their performance today, because They really do enhance and make it a better event. Memorial Day, by definition, is for honoring and mourning military personnel who died while serving the United States Armed Forces. Free to choose where we live, free to choose our life's professions and callings, free to worship in a Catholic church, Protestant church, Jewish synagogue, or Muslim morgue, or just as importantly, the right to remain free from and of religion. We truly are a melting pot of many peoples and cultures, protected by those who served or served and those who made the ultimate sacrifice. I think that was for us today. What timing, huh? Not coming home from conflict overseas or from a training flight and exercise is no different for the families of the fallen. Those families must carry on, but they carry their grief forever. As has been said many times, all gave some and some gave all. Serving in Marine Corps Aviation, as I did, is inherently dangerous, and not all those I remember today were killed in combat, as many were killed in training mishaps. For all living veterans today, it is a day we remember our comrades killed in the line of duty. I know that is exactly what every vet in our audience is thinking about today. For non-vets in the audience today, there are no doubt some who have friends, family members, or acquaintances who didn't come home. We all remember and honor them together. And Mayor, your story is very poignant and on target and on time with your uncle. For me, I begin with remembering somebody I never met, my grandmother's brother, my great uncle, Albert Hopkins, who died in Musses, Argonne, France, on October 23rd, 1918, in World War I, 42 years before I was born. Albert was 23 years old and had much to look forward to when he returned home to Cleveland, Ohio, but he never made it home. I remember Marine Corps Major Nick Ferenz, killed in an F-18 Hornet mishap on September 11, 2000. I met Nick when we were students together at the Marine Corps Command and Staff College at Quantico, Virginia in the school year 1997 and 98. We quickly found out we were fellow Cleveland boys, as Nick grew up in Cleveland Heights and I in Lyndhurst. His dad, Nick Ferenz Sr., was a renowned dentist in the area and was living in Orange when Nick was killed. Nick was a great guy and a superb Marine, Top Gun graduate and a leader to be admired. Gone way too soon. 2 weeks after that tragic mishap, the Marine Corps showed up in full force for Nick's memorial service at St. Gregory's in South Euclid. I remember Captain Dave Spellacy, who was in my air group in Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm. Our air group, in which I flew the OV-10 Bronco, lost 6 aircraft to combat action, 4 AV-8B Harriers and 2 Broncos. One of the Harrier pilots was killed in action, and one of the OV-10 aircrew was killed in action, Captain Dave Spellacy of Worthington, Ohio. Dave was in the other OV-10 squadron, and I knew him, not well, but I knew him. He was killed when his aircraft was shot down on February 25th, 1991, one day before the birth of his youngest child, and 2 days before the end of the war. He left behind a 28-year-old widow and 2 children. I remember OV-10 squadron mates, Mike Casper Shannon, Sergio Vivaldi, Joel Peel, my good friend and Pepper Pike resident, Rick Poposky is here today, was an OV-10 squadron mate. We had flown together after Desert Storm. Rick and Mike Shannon were on a deployment in the Western Pacific when I was soon to be deployed to Saudi Arabia during Desert Storm. Mike Shannon was killed while flying humanitarian support missions in support of earthquake recovery operations in the Philippines. There was not a better Marine or person in the world than Mike Shannon. We were a squadron with a lot of young officers who seemingly switched apartments or rental houses all the time, every time they moved or on deployment. If you were moving, you'd better call Mike first to help you, because if you didn't, he would find out and admonish you for not calling him first. He was always there for his squadron mates. Mike was never able to marry, settle down, and have kids. Mike would have been a great dad. Fellow squadron mates Sergio Vivaldi and Joel Peel were killed in a training mishap near our home station at Camp Pendleton, both too young and gone too soon. There are many more people I could name, but I will stop because I want to move on to discussing our Vietnam vets who suffered in many ways, both overseas and when they returned, because Vietnam never really left them. We now fully recognize and treat PTSD, but for many of our Vietnam vets, the real recognition came too late. I know of at least 2 Vietnam vets with us here today, and I know they are thinking of their fallen comrades, and I see some hats, so I know there are more than 2. Pepper Pike resident John Schmidt was a young enlisted Marine in Vietnam in 2nd Battalion, 7th Marine Regiment. I know John lost many comrades who no doubt still weigh heavy on his heart. I know this because John and I were discussing his service at the Pepper Pike Dogwood Tree giveaway. John was telling me there were times his squad was down to 5 Marines when they were sent on patrol. A normal-sized squad is at least 13 Marines, so you can surmise that the casualty rate in John's unit was very, very high. Gerard Bartasevich of Pepper Pike was in the Air Force in Vietnam, in countries where our government never acknowledged their presence. No doubt there are many who weigh on Bart's mind today and all of our Vietnam vets. I have a special place in my heart for these Vietnam vets. When I came home from Desert Storm, my fellow countrymen gave me a rousing welcome. Our Vietnam vets never received their proper welcome home. They were wrongly spit on and disdained by many of their fellow Americans. My friends, they were policy executors, not policy makers, and were in many cases drafted and certainly did not deserve the treatment that they received. I've always felt a sense of guilt and shame at how our Vietnam vets were treated in comparison to my wonderful treatment. On behalf of all Americans, John, Bart, and others in the crowd, please accept our apologies and gratitude and welcome home. If you're a Vietnam vet, would you please stand up? John, Bart, please join me in welcoming home. We have no large military bases in the greater Cleveland area, but we do have a very strong relationship with the Marine Corps from our hosting of the Reserve Infantry Battalion, 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines in Brook Park, which consists of over 800 Reserve Marines and sailors. 3rd Battalion, 25th Marines has a storied history, having been activated in May 1943 during World War II and sent to fight in the Pacific Island Hopping Campaign. They fought in Saipan, Tinian, Kwajalein, and Iwo Jima. More recently, the battalion was mobilized and activated for service in Iraqi freedom in January of 2005. While deployed, the battalion suffered 46 Marines and 2 sailors killed in action, the most combat casualties of any Marine infantry battalion since Vietnam, with the exception of 1st Battalion, 8th Marines, who lost 220 Marines and sailors in the Beirut bombing. So my friends, freedom is not free, and many times hits closer to home than you realize. Thanks for your service, and thank you for your sacrifice to survivors is no longer enough. You, need to show your thanks by working with and supporting nonprofits, providing services to veterans, families, and families of the fallen. Hire the vets. Hire the children and service spouses of the fallen. Support those children through scholarships and mentoring. Get involved and show those Gold Star families that you care. Gold Star families, for those who may not know, are those who have lost a spouse, child, parent, or other family member in service to our country. They are in a select group of people, most definitely not by choice, but by circumstance. Some of the many nonprofits supporting Gold Star families are Folds of Honor, Homes for Troops, and Operation Homefront. My particular favorite is TAPS, Tragedy Assistance Program for Survivors. TAPS was founded by Major Bonnie Carroll, United States Air Force Reserve, in 1994 following the death of her husband, Brigadier General Tom Carroll, and 7 other soldiers in an Army plane crash in 1992. For her work in founding TAPS and supporting military families of the fallen, Bonnie was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Barack Obama in 2015. Finally, I encourage you all to watch reruns of last night's National Memorial Day concert from the National Mall. It's available on YouTube or pbs.org. It is a truly moving and special event hosted by Joe Montagna and Gary Sinise. Joe and Gary are huge supporters of veterans and the fallen, and I had the honor of working with Gary as his band, the Lieutenant Dan Band, toward the Pacific under the banner of USO shows when I was the commanding officer of Marine Corps Base Hawaii. Though today is not about all vets, but specifically the fallen, I want you all to understand the burden those who made it home, many not whole, carry. 21 veterans a day commit suicide in this country. The burden of their duty follows and haunts them. So I say yes, I consider them having died in the line of duty too. In closing, remember the fallen. Always remember the fallen. And please take care of the families of the fallen. They carry a very heavy burden every single day for many years on end. Thank you, and may we never forget.
Thank you, Colonel. It's now my privilege to introduce former Captain, Army Chaplain, Reverend Joseph Brancatelli. Father Joe was born right here in Cleveland, Ohio. He's a 1998 graduate of Orange High School. There he reached the height of his career, becoming a 4-year wrestling letterman. He earned a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering from Gannon University, the new partner and of Ursuline College here in Pepper Pike. And he holds a Master of Divinity from St. Mary and Graduate School of Theology in Cleveland, Ohio. He was ordained a Catholic priest in 2008 and served at Holy Family Parish in Parma, Ohio. In 2012, he was released to the Archdiocese for military services as a chaplain for the United States Army. During his 10 years, he was stationed at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, Fort Bragg in North Carolina, Arlington National Cemetery, Fort Carson, Fort Riley. He served overseas in Afghanistan in 2013, Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, and Germany in 2017, and South Korea in 2020. His awards and decorations include the Bronze Star, the Meritorious Service Medal, Army Commendation Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters, and a variety of other awards, commendations, and ribbons for his valorous service. In the summer of 2022, he returned to the Diocese of Cleveland to serve as parochial vicar to the St. Clair Parish right here in Lyndhurst, Ohio. He was asked to serve as the parish administrator of Sacred Heart of Jesus Parish in South Euclid and assumed the parish administrator of St. Clair Parish in October 2024. And the father tells me he will soon be moving on to the parish in Mentor, Ohio, the St. Mary of the Assumption Parish. He serves as chaplain to the Catholic Medical Association of Cleveland and is an advisor to the Orange Alumni Association. He has an older sister, Corrine, and younger brother, Matthew, also graduates of Orange High School. So it is with deep respect and honor that I introduce Father Joe to address us this morning. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning. I want to welcome you to City of Pepper Pike's annual Memorial Day ceremony, where we solemnly remember the untold heroic men and women who died in service to our country. It was on May 30th in 1868, 3 years following the conclusion of the Civil War, that Americans began honoring her fallen heroes in what was then known as Decoration Day. And each year since, we have continued this unbroken tradition of honoring the service and sacrifice of our fallen service members. Again, I want to thank you for Mayor Bain for allowing me to come here today for the city of Pepper Pike. It's a special honor for me, being that I grew up right next door in Moreland Hills, Ohio. In fact, my parents are in the audience, and they still have the same house I grew up in. So it's kind of a unique experience to be here today. As the mayor had mentioned, it was 3 years ago that I returned home to the Diocese of Cleveland after serving in the Army for 10 years as a chaplain. During my time, I served in many different bases, as was indicated. Served just 10 miles south of the DMZ, which is the demilitarized zone in South Korea. But all my assignments that I served, or will ever have served, nothing will be as incredible as my 2 years serving at Arlington National Cemetery in Washington, D.C. from 2014 to 2016. While each branch has its own honor guard, it is the Army that conducts the majority of the military burials at Arlington National Cemetery. Led by a lieutenant colonel and a major chaplain, I was selected as one of 6 Army chaplains to fulfill one of the Army's core chaplain competencies, to honor the dead. Every day, Monday through Friday, chaplains at Arlington, along with the Honor Guard, conduct over 30 ceremonial burials for both the deceased soldiers and their dependents, according to their particular faith tradition. Being the Roman Catholic priest, I conducted virtually every Catholic burial there for my 2 years there. It's very humbling to think that in my short time there, and the 1,300 burials I conducted, is just a small mark of its 150 years of existence and the 400,000 Americans who are buried there. I could share stories after story of the great men and women who I had the honor of burying, from 18-year-old privates to multi-star generals. Some of these include Command Sergeant Major Robert Gallagher, who was one of the Ranger Battalion members who was wounded in the infamous Battle of Mogadishu in 1993, and who and his unit story was depicted in Black Hawk Down. Or Lieutenant General Hank Emerson, one of the founding members of the ultra-secret and elite group called Delta Force. He is one of the most decorated veterans to never earn the Medal of Honor. Retired Secretary of State and Chief of Staff Colin Powell gave his eulogy at his service. Or the simple and humble Puerto Rican soldier, Private Miguel Vera, whose medal was upgraded to the Medal of Honor by President Obama. He was known for willing to stay behind to allow his soldiers to escape. His sergeant remembers going back to recover his body and his rifle facing at his side towards the enemy. I could share these and more stories of known heroes, but instead I will focus on a few stories of unknown heroes who are buried at Arlington's National Cemetery and whose stories remain untold. I begin with the greatest honor that any chaplain can do at Arlington National Cemetery, or what we call repatriation services. These occur when the government painstakingly identifies return homes and provides dignified burials for our nation's heroes who have been lost in battle. These burials bring closure to family and friends, some who died over 70 years ago prior. Mayor Bain alluded to this. These 3 stories are stories of the repatriated heroes that I had the honor to bring home and to give fitting rest. I start with the story of 2 best friends from the same hometown. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, these young boys enlisted in the United States Army together, requested to go through basic training together, and even requested to be assigned the same platoon together. They fought in the Pacific, side by side, island to island. It was in one of the island battles that the Japanese overran their platoon's position and both were killed in the line of duty. their unit was forced to hastily bury these two young friends in a single, unmarked grave on top of each other. Their compatriots documented their makeshift graves, and over 70 years later, the government found their graves, identified the remains, and returned them home, where they now buried forever side by side at Arlington National Cemetery. One of their nieces, who never knew her uncle, shared a treasured picture of her uncle and his best friend in their final days at home, posing in their uniform before they deployed in World War II. The family never knew their story or their resting place. Or take, for example, First Lieutenant Jack Andrews. He was a young military officer who fought in the Korean War. His unit came under counter-artillery fire, and many died, including Andrews. He was listed as MIA, killed in action, but they could never recover his remains. But in 2015, advances in DNA were able to detect some trace amounts of DNA in unmarked human remains. He was returned home, and the only surviving member of his family who remembered Jack Andrews was his sister, who was only 10 at the time when he left to go to Korea. She shared how the last time she saw her brother when he came home on his pre-deployment leave before he left. And then, as she said, he was just gone. He disappeared from my life, and we never had the opportunity for closure. We never did a memorial service or even a funeral mass. Or another is Private Smith, who had a twin brother assigned to the same unit in the Korean War. The two brothers are fighting at the Chosin Reservoir while in North Korea. Supported by the Chinese soldiers, the North Koreans attacked and overran the American positions. Private Smith was wounded in battle, and his very twin brother went to his side and told him that he was going to get a combat medic to help him. However, upon returning to his side, the twin brother was captured and taken into a POW camp in North Korea, where he was tortured and eventually died in captivity. The government later were able to identify his remains, but could not bring him home right away. Eventually, he was brought home, and we had the honor to bury him. His twin brother shared the story of him and his twin brother, but most of all regretting leaving his brother's side when he was dying. He wished he could have been captured with his brother, so that his brother would not have been alone when he died. While he was happy to finally have closure, he admitted that he lost a part of his life that day that could never be returned. We use such terms as courage, sacrifice, honor, valor for these great people. But in reality, these only palletize the real impact from their death. Their death leaves holes and invisible scars in the hearts and minds of family and friends and their compatriots. While Memorial Day has evolved to take on a patriotic feel from its humble beginnings, we must be humble, though, and to let go a little bit of our American pride, to recapture its original purpose, to remember and honor those who have died in service to our country. We must and we always retell the stories of our lost and fallen heroes, the sons and daughters of our country, and we must never be naive to the pain inflicted on the hearts and minds of their family and friends and their surviving loved ones. And once again, Mr. Mayor, I want to thank you for this opportunity today, for the city of Pepper Pike, and for all of you allow me to share just some personal stories of great American heroes whose stories have remained untold. May God bless you, your families on this wonderful day, our great city, our great country, and the entire United States of America. You're welcome.
Thank you, Father. We will now be honored to be able to hear the Orange High School Band and its performance of the songs of the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, and Coast Guard, accompanied by the Lionettes. The Colonel is right. It's always the band. The Colonel is always right. Listening to the band and seeing these marvelous young people who are performing for us this morning, I'm reminded of a tour of Omaha Beach that I was privileged to be on with my wife and younger son some years ago. And as we toured the American Cemetery, which sits high above the beach itself, and I was reading the grave markers and realizing the young ages that were displayed on those markers. And I thought, as I was standing here listening to the music, how those ages were 2, 3 years older than these kids who are playing for us today. We sent our children off to save the world, and they did it. And we must never forget them and their sacrifice. Today we also hear from still another veteran, and I close with words spoken by a Civil War veteran, our 20th President James Garfield, born just a few miles from here in the then Orange Township. Speaking at Arlington Cemetery in 1868 for the first national commemoration, former Union General and sitting Congressman Garfield proclaimed, "We do not know one promise these men made, one pledge they give, one word they spoke, but we do know they summed up and perfected by one supreme act the highest virtues of men and citizens. For love of country they accepted death, and thus resolved all doubts, and made immortal their patriotism and their virtue." Please rise now for the raising of the flag and playing of taps, followed by the firing of the report in remembrance of all who have fallen. Thank you all for attending, and have a wonderful Memorial Day with your families. And remember, you must always remember, and we must never forget. That concludes our commemoration. Thank you for being here.